Hey y'all, welcome to the Gone Outdoors podcast. Thanks for joining us. This is the place where we talk about all things hunting and fishing. As we like to say, if it's going on out there, then we're talking about it right here. So let's get after it with the latest episode. Hey y'all, it's Mike Rhodes with Gone Outdoors and the Gone Outdoors podcast. Today we're going to talk with Bruce Swearingen from 4S Wildlife. Bruce is down in Reynolds, Georgia, and with deer season just coming to an end here in our state, we're already starting to plan for September 2020 when it kicks off again. So I thought it'd be a good time to get on the phone with somebody that knows about deer management and have a little conversation. So hang on while I get Bruce on the line with us. Hey Bruce, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Hope y'all are doing good.
Oh, doing real good, man. It was good to see you up in Indianapolis last week. Glad to be back home, though. How about you? You guys worn out?
Yeah, man. Those shows like that are just tough on everybody, I think. I mean, it's meant to do business and meant for a good time, but it's tough, especially certain parts of the year when some of these shows happen because there's so much going on back at home and you're trying to manage all that. And it's tough.
Yeah, and they kind of pile them shows in back to back to back, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of dealers we deal with that, I mean, they just hit the road and they're show after show. I mean, we had a sales guy at another show that was not there for setup, and he showed up the day of, and he left there and drove to another show, and he didn't get home for a long time, so he's worn out. But yes, it's a pretty tough time of year.
Yeah, it's always good to see the house, though. But when we were up there talking about it, and that's why I wanted to, I asked you if you wouldn't mind joining us today because, here in Georgia, we're kind of in a transition from deer season. I mean, I know in Alabama the rut hadn't even gotten started, and other places in the country, the deer are still rutting and there's some hunting going on and that kind of stuff. But, for us here in Georgia, most of our rut's going to happen sometime in November. Heck, there's already folks that are seeing on their trail cams, bucks that are shedding their antlers. So I thought it might be a good time for us to talk about, as strange as it may seem, talk about September. It's 2020. It's going to be coming, an opening day of deer season.
Yep.
And so, I mean, you guys are known for your deer feed, your attractants, your minerals, those kind of things. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, from your standpoint, Bruce, you've been hunting, you've been living in Georgia forever. You hunt forever in Georgia. You got a lot of clients. You've seen some routines. What would you be telling folks now as far as, is it time to start feeding deer? I mean, if you're going to have a year-round program, it's now the time. And if so, tell me what they should be doing.
Yeah, so we get that question many times a week this time of year. And I guess one reason we get it is because, we know a lot about deer nutrition products, but I guess more importantly than that is the things we learn from other people. I can learn what one guy's doing and it's working or not working and, pass it on to another guy and on down the line. So that's kind of what we do on deciding when we start milling our, spring, summer pellets, our 20% stuff. And like you said, with the shedding being early in a lot of places, I mean, we've got some farms to start shedding in late December and on through, March and all. But we kind of, when we start seeing shedding and we start hearing from some of our bigger farms and smaller farms on shedding, they typically start ordering. So, we've got a lot of big giant high fence and, no fence operations that are customers. And when they all start ordering, that's when we start milling. I mean, they're all dealing with different wildlife biologists or nutritionists, and they're growing deer for a living, the guys that work in a lot of these places. So we just kind of take a synopsis of all those ordering, and that's when we decide to do it.
Yeah, I hear you. And I got a quick question for you. Some of these folks may not know, and, I could use education myself. You mentioned 20%, tell me what that means for the lowman.
Okay. So, the 20% pellet is pretty much what, most guys that have a deer feed product or deer feed manufacturer, that's normally the protein you see or the protein level you see in a spring, summer, gross type of pellet. I mean, there's some guys that make some that are lesser protein and some that are more. But when you start hearing numbers like 20%, that, or 18% or whatever, the higher numbers, that typically means that's your growing season type of pellet, which most people, when they ask me exactly, what months, that's normally from January to September or shed to hardhorn. That's the best way to remember is when you want to use your
it's
growth
time
feather.
now, basically, right?
It is. I mean, we're probably, man, I guess we're probably already 175 tons deep, probably already in the summer, spring, summer pellet. Now it's all over the board. I mean, we'll have guys that they'll start in March and feed through September. We'll have guys that'll start in March and feed through, July or something. We have guys that never quit on
Right.
20%. There's not that many of those guys. We make a winter stabilizer pellet is the name of it, but it's a lower protein, higher carbohydrate for the summer months. Just a lot
Sounds
more
like
fat.
my diet.
That's right. Yeah. It's kind of the steak and potatoes. But it's a cheaper price, but more suitable for that time of year. But some guys do that in off season. Some guys just use corn.
Right.
But yeah, that's typically the answer we give people. It's kind of all over the board. But the guys that are doing it for a living, and have guys on staff, I mean, they're pretty much January to September on a spring, summer program.
So you'd be talking like management program that got somebody on the land working it for them all year long. They're pretty much going from January all the way to opening day, huh?
Pretty much. I mean, we have customers that have 3 acres and, customers that have thousands and thousands of acres. But the reason I try to refer to guys like that is because they're doing it all day long, dealing with nutritionists and wildlife biologists. And it's not that we put any more importance on what they think or do versus a guy that has 10 acres. It's just a good way to start. I mean, they're out there in the trenches, so to speak. So, we try to take what they're doing and learn from it.
You guys get educated too. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what we learn. I mean, we get to learn what guys are doing that's working or not working and pass it on down the line. So we get a lot of questions because of that. I mean, they know that we're listening,
Yeah. Well, what are, I mean, you guys see a lot of folks that are feeding. What are their, I mean, do they like trough feeders or like gravity feeders? Any opinions on that you have or that you've heard from other folks?
Yeah. We get a lot of questions on feeders, and it's for those same reasons, just because they know we're doing it, for a living. But,
sure.
In my opinion, trough feeders are the best way to get the most feed delivered to a deer. There's some gravity feeders out there. Most of the time it's because they can see all their surroundings. Like you take a gravity feeder that's like a port style, meaning they put their nose up in that little cone,
Mm-hmm.
So most of those, the feed's under their chin. So when they're eating from that, you've seen the pictures, they got their head turned sideways because that's the only way they can eat it. So when they do that, their eyes are obviously on the side of their head. So they got one eye on the sky and one eye on the ground. So I think the deer can see 280 degrees, I think is what it is. But anyway, when they got one eye on the sky and one eye on the ground, they can't see the surroundings as much. And I just don't think they feed as much from a gravity feeder. Now, don't get me wrong, we have guys that have gravity feeders that feed way more than guys with troughs. But
right.
But typically, we like troughs better. But there's guys that might live out of state or out of town, and they need a big 1,000-pound or 2,000-pound or whatever pound feeder, and they need to fill it up and go back home for a month or 6 weeks or whatever. So they really have no choice.
Sure.
I mean, we're actually a distributor for a certain type of gravity feeder that we like. It's not a port style, but we just offer it for those types of guys that just don't like troughs, which, with troughs, you also are going to get some of your non-target animals that you're feeding. Coons, squirrels, hogs if you have them. So, that can be aggravating. So it's a tough trade-off. I mean, it's tough to know what to do. I mean, on my place, I have both, even beyond all the testing we do, as far as my feeders that I keep for my farm, for myself. I have a mix of both, and it's for those reasons. If I got a place close to a swamp that I know is just loaded up with raccoons, I don't want a trough feeder there.
Right.
Unless I'm going to take time to try to catch coons out and stuff, that's hard to have the time to do. But a lot of guys do.
Well, it's funny you say that because it sounds like, you'll go and any hunter that's out there, they might go and set a feeder up in one place and find out that it's not the most ideal, whether it's the coons or hogs or whatever else, and then you're going to move it. So I mean, is there any special tricks to, you know, I'm going to move my feed, or do I have to do anything different for establishing a new feed site? Is there anything I need to look for?
Absolutely. A deer is the most finicky animal ever seen in my life when it comes to, you know, getting them trained to eat something. And on the feeder side, it takes typically longer to train them to a gravity type feeder than it is a trough. You know, just because they might have to put their nose up in something or whatever. So when you move one, it typically shuts them down for a little while, whatever type it is. And when you establish a new site, I mean, it takes them a minute. You know, you're going to want to put it out and, you know, fill it up with your pellets or whatever you're using, and typically take corn and throw it all around on the ground, all around it. I mean, sometimes 30 yards from it.
Okay.
And slowly keep that corn closer, and they'll lead up toward the trough, and after a while they start eating. And once you get them trained, I mean, you'll never train them again. But I mean, I've seen people have troughs or gravity feeders or whatever in a location for years and fed tons of feed through it, and decide they want to move it 30 degrees for whatever reason. Maybe they're getting some blow in or whatever, and the deer will shut down for 2 weeks. You know, the same deer that's been eating from it. I mean, it's just crazy. But I mean, you know, when you start a new site, I mean, you're introducing two things that are, you know, just foreign to them: feed and whatever type of feeder you got. I mean, they look at it like it's a UFO for a little while.
Yeah, it's a different structure out there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And, you know, then you got guys that want big giant feeders, so they don't have to go into their property as much. And then you got guys that want small feeders. And I've often had a question that comes to my mind that I'd love to have an answer to is, what's best? And I don't mean the time it takes to fill a feeder up, but if you put a giant feeder in, so you're not going as much to feed it, so you're not spreading human scent, you know, you're not making noise and stuff like that as much. I don't know if that's better, or to feed a lot so the deer are used to you being in, and then they're used to smelling you, and maybe they identify you with the dinner plate.
Yeah, that
you know, when
sense.
it comes hunting season. But I don't know the answer to that. I've asked a lot of people, and nobody really knows. I don't know how you would ever really prove what is going on there, but it's a pretty neat topic that we need to figure out.
Yeah, well, when you figure it out, you call me back, because I'd like to hear about that for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're feeding, we're all that kind of stuff. I mean, you've got the Antler Addict, 4S Antler Addict deer mineral that you have out there, and there's lots of other minerals on the market. So, but I mean, what is your experience? When's the best time to start putting that out on the field?
So anytime they need feed to grow, they need mineral.
Okay. So we're doing these things together.
Time of year. Yeah. Okay. Now,
we putting them in the same spot?
I don't. This is my opinion, of course. I don't know this to be law, but we encourage people to put their mineral site in a different location. Of course, it's better if it's a high traffic area, but in a different location from the trough, because the fact is, every single deer on your property is not going to come to that feeder. I don't care what kind it is, trough, gravity, whatever. So the deer that are just terrified of that thing and are never going to eat from it for whatever reason, this gives them some added benefit of nutrient intake away from that site that they're never going to visit. On top of that, it gives you another location that makes your property attractive to the deer. So, you know, if your water and your trough and your mineral site and your food plot, for example, are all in the same spot, and you've got deer stumbling across your property like during the rut that are just maybe have never been on your property before, they might not see all this or come across all this, but if you've got your water in one spot and your mineral in another, and your food plots in another, and your troughs in another, it gives you more advantage to attract foreign deer or deer that have never been to your place, and, you know, maybe they'll find something they like and stay.
I got you. So you got to increase the odds of them stumbling upon something they might want.
I mean, that's what we advise people. I mean, I have no reason to think that other than the common sense side of it, but that's what we think. And as far as the mineral sites, you know, if you're using a mineral that's a really good mineral that's just not all salt, it can be kind of bitter. So we try to get people to put it in clay-based locations so it'll hold moisture to help dilute it down some.
So how do you I don't know how do you establish a mineral site?
We dig a hole, maybe, I mean, there's no perfect rule to it, but, 8 or 10 inches deep, a couple of feet wide, and then mix your mineral with the clay and then leave it to press a little bit where water might stand in it.
Okay.
And, guys sometimes seem to think that's a bad thing for the water to stand, but it's not. I mean, it's really good. They'll keep on hammering that thing, and that's just the best way we found to do it. Now, we've got guys that have the real sandy land, and in the county we're in, I mean, we're a real diverse county. We have a lot of sandy areas, and some guys will take like 15 or 20 gallon buckets, and they'll pop a couple of weep holes in the bottom and dig the sand out and put the bucket in the hole and mix the mineral and the sand back in, and it tends to work pretty good. But normally when it's real sandy, you don't seem to get as much consumption of the mineral. Now, I will say, when you get on a really good pellet program, and if the pellet you're using has a real good vitamin and mineral content, they won't eat as much vitamin and mineral that you're putting out on the ground because they can only take so much real vitamin and mineral. So typically if you got a guy that hadn't been feeding or doing vitamins and minerals separately or whatever, and they start eating a lot of feed, they'll slow down the amount of mineral they're eating also.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a pretty high content now, some of the vitamins and minerals or mineral on the market's really high in salt, which is fine. I mean, people like that as an attractant or whatever, and they eat the fool out of it because it's such a small percentage of vitamin and mineral that they're having to consume a lot more to satisfy their body's needs. But some people like that for deer surveys or whatever, or just sightings, and we try to also, speaking of time, and we try to get guys to put vitamin and mineral out in the winter also. Mm-hmm. Now, they're not going to eat it very much most of the time, but trying to let that animal know that they can always go there and get vitamin and mineral. I heard a guy I was talking to one time that he said that an antler is what's known as a secondary sex characteristic, meaning that a buck does not care about his antler as much as he does his body. And when he's growing antler, he pulls vitamin and mineral from the skeletal system. So this is totally something that I have in my mind. I mean, I've never read this part of it or anything, but in my mind, if you could fool that animal or fool that buck into knowing that vitamin and mineral source is always there, I wonder if you can fool his mind into knowing that he can easily replace it. So then maybe he'll release or train his body to release vitamin and mineral from the skeletal system to go toward antler growth if he knows he can quickly replace it. Instead of just doing it with a regular diet. Now, like I said, I've never heard that. I don't know that to be true, but it sounds like something you could do. And if you're putting the vitamin and mineral in the clay, it's really not going anywhere. Right. I mean, it's going to stick right there, so that's why we try to get people to do it in the winter too, is just to keep
the routine, right? Sure.
Yeah, to see if you can fool that animal's mind into releasing more since he knows he can replace it. Because, I mean, everybody knows that deer will tell you what they need. Kind of like a 20% pellet. Most of the guys that are feeding that in the winter, they don't see a whole lot of consumption. Same thing with vitamin and mineral. You don't see much consumption in the winter. Well, that tells me right there that they obviously need it when they're growing body and antler.
Right. And in the wintertime, they don't need it as much because they've already grown it. Right.
Right. So they slow down eating. I mean, to me, that's just a really great way to say, deer will tell you what they need or to let you know that they did need it at that time of year because they were eating it, and then they stopped. If they ate it all year, I guess a debate could be made whether they actually needed it or not. During growth season, I mean that might be wrong. I don't know, but it's common sense, I guess. But
I hear you. Well, the other part of this whole deer program that and I noticed it maybe 15, 20 years ago. The land management, the deer management, all that stuff's got. So we've talked about the feed. We've talked about some minerals. What about food plots? I mean, summer plots, that kind of stuff. Do you want to put that in a third location? You got mineral one, feeder another, and a plot in another?
So I like to have feeders and mineral away from food plots. I don't mind the mineral as much, but I prefer it not to be. But my feeders, I definitely don't want those near a food plot unless it's a feed-only plot. And what I mean by that is I don't like to have protein feeders on a kill plot because the feeder needs to be somewhere they feel safe, somewhere they're not pressured, they're not bothered, they can go there and eat. and move on about their day or night or whatever. If you're sitting there basically hunting over it, your odds of having a lot of consumption on that trough or feed are a lot less.
Right.
Because it becomes a danger zone. So yeah, that's typically what we try to say there. And touching on food plots, something we've started suggesting in the past handful of years is, if you have the land to do it, is to have these dedicated plots for summer plots only. And, we get such a late frost in certain parts of Georgia, you can have like peas or soybeans or lab or something like that, depending on what time of year it's planted. I mean, we still hadn't had a good frost yet. In our part of the state. So, there's probably been beans that were still green a month ago. But,
that's funny because I've told people before, I said, right here in Georgia, turkey season comes in about the third week of March, and I've been sitting out there leaning up against the pine tree when it's 25 degrees when the sun comes up, when it's 65 degrees when the sun comes up. You just never know.
It's all over the place. So I guess what I'm getting at with what I was saying is, you go out and plant these beautiful summer plots. It's hot. A lot of people are more busy in the spring, just, in certain parts of whatever work they're having, going on or whatever. But so it's hard to get out there and plant them. Extremely important, but hard to do. But these things are big and beautiful and, big plants, pretty green. And then you're sitting there going, man, this thing sure is pretty, and the deer are hammering it, but I got to go hair up my soybeans to plant my fall stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically go out there and kill everything, and then you've got that time in there to where the plate's empty. You just kill that stuff. You've got to wait on this other stuff to come up. And a lot of these fall plots, they don't really like to eat as much of until they get some good cold weather.
Right.
So, we try to get people to put in dedicated summer plots, and you just leave them. Hunt over them while they're green. When the frost or cold or whatever finally gets them, just move on to your fall plots that you have planted in a different location. It helps with pressure in certain spots. And, it does mean you have extra plots and extra fertilizer and extra seed, but it has been an insanely valuable tool for people to use, and, it gives you more hunting locations too.
Well, that's some good stuff, man. And I appreciate you taking the time. We're getting to the point where we're probably going to need to start wrapping it up. Just, things get running long here on these podcasts. We can sit and talk forever. Basically what you're telling me is, and telling folks is, hey, now's the time to get out there and start feeding these deer. It's the growing season, and let's start getting them some protein, and let's start getting them some minerals and those kind of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The deer run down from the rut and, the deer season and the stress of hunters and stuff like that. So it's a great time to start rebuilding that body. And, it's really hard to grow a big set of antlers on an animal that's not healthy.
Yeah.
It just common sense there. So yeah, it's a great time. We really try to push people on that, and it's not just to sell feed. We always try to tell people the right thing, and based on what we've seen in the past and what we're seeing this year, it's time to get going.
Well, it is time to get going. And a lot of those folks that we see here at GON, they talk about y'all, they talk about your products, but they talk about y'all, which is more important than a product. It's just, good people and that kind of thing. And I'm going to plug you a little bit because we've known each other for a long time. And finally, last year, you guys, 4S Wildlife, joined up with us, in our truck buck contest. And that's where we see a lot of these big deer, and a lot of them are feeding your stuff, and most of them are on feeding programs. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And that's how we see all these big deer. And you guys joined us with the truck buck sponsorship. So we appreciate the partnership there. All of these folks that'll be scoring for GON, in the next few weeks for the deer scoring, they're going to be, either winning their Matthews bow or their Browning gun or their CVA muzzle loader, all those kind of things with their safety harness from Hunter Safety System. But we're also going to get some antler addict from 4S and some 4S draw attractant. So, it's all a good fit for what we do. And, we'll get together in July for sure up at the Outdoor Blast, where somebody's going to get to see all y'all's products, get to see you guys and us, and somebody will walk away with a John Meagle Chevrolet truck too. So,
that's awesome, man. That's a great thing y'all got going, and we really appreciate y'all. I know everybody else does too.
Well, deer season goes year round, man, and we're talking about the growing part, and then it'll be kicking off before we know it. So, Bruce, how do folks find you guys online and on Instagram, social media, all that kind of stuff? Tell them how to find you.
4swildlife.com. 4S is in Sam, wildlife.com is the website, and Instagram is at 4S Wildlife, and the Facebook is Advanced Wildlife Solutions. You know, we get a ton of interaction there and answer a lot of questions, and
so people can hit you up with some questions on those in those places too. That's awesome.
Oh man, yeah, it's daily. We're talking to people, and I think we're getting a lot of people too that are calling in and stuff because they know that if we don't know the answer to something, we'll find out for you. We're not scared to say we don't know. So we work on that. I mean, it's well, one thing about that feed, and I know you said we need to wrap it up, but one thing I want to say that was really important is, to my knowledge now, you know, this could have happened before and I don't know about it or don't remember it, but to my knowledge, anybody that's ever started a feed program and did it right, I don't know of anybody that's ever stopped. Now, if a guy was, you know, just halfway doing it and filling up feeders every now and then and maybe wasn't seeing a lot of results, they might quit. But to my knowledge, guys that start it and do it right, I don't know of one that's ever quit. So that's pretty strong.
Yeah, results oriented, right?
Exactly. So it's definitely an important tool and a great piece of the puzzle to add.
Well, so a year or two later, you start seeing a lot bigger deer. It's going to be hard to walk away from that. So, I appreciate you joining us. I think we educated a lot of folks. And again, people, if you have any questions, hit them with an email or Instagram or give them a call, and they'll be happy to help you or point you in the right direction and find out. But Bruce, man, I appreciate you taking some time with us today, and I always appreciate you as a friend and as a partner. We will look forward to talking again real soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thanks for all y'all do. And y'all have a good day.
All right, buddy. You too, man.
Hey, y'all. Got a question for the GON crew? Whether it's about hunting, fishing, or just life, we want to hear from you. Call 678-729-7366 and leave us a message. Your question may be on a future podcast, but we'll do our best to give you the answer. As always, we appreciate you reading GON Magazine and listening to the Gone Outdoors podcast. Find all the podcasts and a ton more about the outdoors on GON.com. Until next time, y'all stay well.